Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us here for another installment of MediaPost webinar series. I'm John Whitfield, SVP of Partnerships here at MediaPost, and we have a great panel discussion for you all today, put together by our friends over at Reveal Mobile. MediaPost webinars bring together the media, marketing, and advertising community to learn more about the methodologies and technologies that make effective business possible across a variety of categories. And these are brought to you by top solutions providers, marketers, and practitioners in our industry. As I mentioned, we have a great panel for you today, a great panel of digital marketing experts. In fact, the topic is the new target audience, how agencies and advertisers are winning over consumers. This is going to be a real treat. It's actually moderated by Dan Dillon, VP of Marketing at Reveal Mobile. And we have some expert panelists for you today from LinkedIn, ActiveCampaign, and Centro. Just a reminder, after the presentation, we'll have time for a question and answer session, and you can submit your questions at any time during the presentation in the question box found on the GoToWebinar interface here. So please feel free to use that as we go. And with that, let's bring in Dan from Reveal Mobile to get things going. Dan, how are you?
Good, John. Thanks for the intro. I appreciate it. How are you?
Doing just fine, man. Thanks so much for assembling this fantastic group. It's going to be great, I'm sure. And you know what? I won't take any more of your time. I'll let you take it away.
Awesome. Thanks so much. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody, to today's panel session. We are so happy to have you all with us today. Last I heard, there were not quite 1,000 people registered, so I imagine we've got somewhere in the many hundreds of you on today's call, which is fantastic. You are in the right place at the right time. Today, we're going to be talking all about how agencies and advertisers are winning over consumers, just as John said a moment ago. And we've got this great panel to talk us through a couple of key topics. Before we get to our panel, though, in introductions, I want to walk you through just a quick agenda so you know kind of what you're in for over the next 45, 60 minutes or so. So we're going to talk through the pandemic and sort of current consumer moods, right? How are people feeling? What are people thinking? How are people shopping? And then we're going to talk through quickly how to find audiences via geofencing. This is something Reveal Mobile knows a lot about. We work with agencies and retailers all the time on this kind of thing, so we want to share some insights on that. And then we want to share how marketers and paid media professionals are spending to get consumers back into stores. Some key survey results we just did last month, so really fresh data. And then what you came for is our panel session. We're going to walk through a series of questions that we have for our panel today. And then we also want to make sure we get to your questions. So that's basically the end of today's webinar is going to be dedicated to questions you have. So with that, I want to bring in our panel and make sure we hear from everybody just in terms of who you are, what you do, what you're great at, and then we'll shut off cameras. But let's start with you, Tusar. Go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Tusar Barrick. I run marketing for our agency and partner ecosystem at LinkedIn. I've been at LinkedIn almost 4 years now, so it's been a great time and over a decade or so of experience in the ad tech ecosystem and space. I'm very excited to be here and talk with all of you later when we get into the panel session.
Awesome. Thanks, Tusar. Amy, take it away.
Hi, everyone. My name is Amy Rumpler, and I oversee the paid search and paid social practice at Centro. I've been with the company for about 5 years, have been in advertising for about 15, and specializing in digital for more than the last 10. So really excited to be able to bring some perspective today, just from the standpoint of working with a wide variety of clients across several different industries, and also having close partnerships with the channel partners that we work with, including LinkedIn, of course, Facebook, Google, and many others. Thank you for having me.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. Thanks for being here. Jason, take us home here.
Dan, good to see you again. I used to work with Tusar. Tusar, good to see you. Amy, always a pleasure. My name is Jason Miller, Senior Director of Brand Marketing at ActiveCampaign. If you're not familiar with ActiveCampaign, we help companies grow through CXA, which is customer experience automation, accelerating business growth with automated one-on-one experiences that connect across all the channels and through the entire customer lifecycle. I'm excited to be here. You asked us what we're good at. Dan, I was thinking about that. If I had one marketing superpower, I think it's the ability to tell if an ad is relevant and entertaining. So I'll just leave it there. And I think we have some good conversation coming up around that.
I love it. I love it. That's a perfect, just little piece of bait for people on the panel session. That's perfect. And thank you all for introducing yourselves. I appreciate it. I am Dan. I'm the moderator of today's session. I have this great privilege of working with Amy, Tusar, and Jason today on today's panel. And first, I want to walk you through a couple of slides. So guys, you go ahead and turn your cameras off and we'll bring you back here in a few minutes. And I'm going to walk you through, everybody, a couple of just, context setting slides here to kind of tee things up for our panel. And just a reminder, your questions really do run this show. So anytime a question occurs to you, as John said, pop it into the questions box on the GoToWebinar console, and we'll get to those here very briefly. Without further ado, let's talk about what we're here for, and that is how to get your target audience where you want them to shop and buy, right? So some backdrop first. Morning Consult put some data out just a few weeks ago that showed how consumers are feeling about the pandemic, right? A lot of us are 2 shots in, a couple of us are 1 shot in, and the rest of us were probably, we've got a ticket somewhere. And you can see that as the vaccine expands across the population, worry is in decline, right? So look back at April of 2020, there was this huge spike in frankly, the fight or flight mentality, right? What is this about? What are we all doing? Huddle, hide. And if you fast forward now to April of 21 or May of 21, across all demographics, you can see the trend line falling precipitously, right? We're down now, it looks like at about 40% of people who are worried about the pandemic from a high of roughly 70%, at the peak, right? So with that comes a really great rising comfort level among consumers to do specific things, right? Like eat in restaurants, go shopping in stores. You can see nearly 70% across all demos are ready to go shopping again, right? No one's been to the movies, right? None of us are going to see movies these days. You can see movie, worry or discomfort was pretty high, with 20% of people being comfortable going to the movies and 80% being uncomfortable. Well, now that number is nearly 40%. So just in time for the summer blockbuster season. And then across all entertainment categories, you can see from Morning Consult, people want to go to concerts and amusement parks and the theater, and they want to go to museums, for crying out loud. So we all have this amazing amount of pent-up demand and frankly, dollars we've saved from not going out, ready to spend this summer, right? So what we want to do is make sure that we can show you what this retail calendar year is going to look like, right? And here are the headlines spinning from the NRF, from CNBC, from Bloomberg. Every report that's coming out is saying that this is going to be a banner year for retail, both online, we know that, but also in store, right? As a reminder, in case you're not familiar, 80% of all commerce happens in physical brick and mortar stores. Still, even with that massive spike in 2020 and shopping habits changing, most of us still want to go to the store, try the thing on, walk in the shoes, see all the things, right? So that's really what this is about. I thought we'd take a look just briefly at what people are most excited to do, right? So as you think about your own target audience, you think about people you're advertising to, depending on what kind of retail organization you are, what kind of agency you are, and who you advertise on behalf of, people are dying to go on vacation. We know that. It's an old story, and frankly, I'm sure we all have our tickets to Paris or Hong Kong or wherever we're going. But then there's a couple other things that people are really excited to do, but that are also already doing them, right? You can see the gold bar on going out to a restaurant is already at 25%, which means a quarter of us are already going to restaurants, even though we're excited to go to restaurants, right? So that sort of thing is already happening. And then you can see 23% of us are going to malls, right? Which is fascinating. But then there's this other sort of select, slice of the population that really can't wait to go to the movies, stay at a hotel, go to an amusement park and ride the roller coaster, go to a museum, and very, very few of them in that gold bar are actually doing it today, right? So this is the audience that has the money, that's going to spend it when the weather warms up in Minneapolis or wherever it's still cold, and they're going to go ride the rides, and they're going to go watch the movies, right? So from a geofencing standpoint, it's really interesting to look at these audiences and see who is addressable, right? So just for fun, I went in to visit local, and I took a look at AMC's audience of moviegoers from December of 2019, which is eons ago, all the way through February of 2020, right? Right before the pandemic made us all just run and hide, right? And this is 25 theaters in the Chicagoland area. AMC has, I guess, 25 movie houses there. You can see that looking back to that time period for those 3 months, AMC has an audience of 245,000 moviegoers that they could just remarket to and bring back with the summer blockbusters, right? So geofencing is a really unique technology that allows you to go find exactly who is showing intent by having come to your location in the past. Pretty powerful, right? And then you can see the second audience on the list there in the bottom right corner. AMC has 1.5 million audience members nationwide for this same time period that they could go remarket and say, hey guys, time to come see Toy Story 6 or whatever the movie is, right? So geofencing gives you them that unique capability. And then going a bit deeper on AMC's movie-going audience, I also took a look in Visit Local to see where else their audience is going, right? So AMC moviegoers do other things. They don't just watch movies, right? It turns out they go to Bath and Body Works and they drink coffee at Starbucks and they go to Express and they shop at Journeys. So it's interesting to know that if you're an AMC marketer, marketing on behalf of your theaters, you want to be able to have a conversation with Starbucks or have a conversation with Bath and Body Works and say, hey, you know what? We have a huge overlap in our audience. Let's go ahead and do something fun together. Let's be creative, right? So it's a really interesting way to think about how to attract not only your existing audience, but the audience who's likely to visit your location because they have an affinity for your brand, right? So that takes us to a couple of different use cases in geofencing, just to think about this relative to location data. Here at Reveal Mobile, we see a ton of customers, agencies, retailers, brands, all the above, run all kinds of campaigns. You can imagine it runs the gamut, right? Everyone's unique. But if you were to strip away all the nuance and all the decoration, it really kind of boils down to 3 core use cases for using location data in campaigns. And the first one is agencies and retailers are looking to retain the customers that their clients or that they already have, right? They've already got this diner, they've got this moviegoer, they've got this shoe buyer, whoever, and they want to bring them back for this summer's latest fashions or for this summer's latest menu items or whatever the case might be, right? So it's easy to geofence your own locations and just remarket to people with, frankly, a pretty high conversion rate. Then there's a second cohort of Visit Local user here at Reveal Mobile who wants to win more share, right? They want to grow their piece of the pie. So they're geofencing their competitors. This is, let's just make it up. This is Taco Bell geofencing Chipotle, or this is Papa John's geofencing Pizza Hut. I'm just making these names up. So they're just basically taking pizza lovers and bringing them to the right store because they've been going to the wrong store all this time. And then the third category are organizations that are doing exactly what AMC Theater is doing here, looking for audiences in locations where they know their ideal customer already visits. So these aren't competitors necessarily, but this is AMC Theater geofencing Starbucks because they know moviegoers grab a coffee afterwards. So they can remarket to Starbucks drinkers, if you will, and say, hey, you're going to the wrong movie theater over there at Cinemark. Come on over here to AMC and enjoy the better air conditioning or whatever the case might be, right? And frankly, geofencing is sort of this open secret in the market. It's pretty well established as a strategy. 90%, 89% of marketers are using location data today in their campaigns. And by the way, this is everything from, geo-targeting entire countries in Google Ads, all the way down to geofencing a specific retail location in Visit Local or a tool like Visit Local. And then you can see 60% of marketers are using location data to drive a more personalized experience. And that comes from Merkle. That data is actually a little bit, might be coming up on a year old. So I imagine knowing that consumers expect brands to know them and understand them, I'm sure that number, frankly, is even higher these days. And then this is the really striking metric here on the far right. We are spending $38.7 billion on location-based ads. Well, this is a 2023 forecast. So right now we're spending north of 30 billion, and it's growing at about 15%, which is the same rate digital marketing is growing as a category. So location-based ads is going to be $38.7 billion by 2023. And frankly, that puts it on the same kind of pedestal as a paid social, right, as a channel. So it's a massive center of gravity for paid media spend. And consumers know that to derive value, to derive convenience in their lives, they've got to give up some data, right? Like we know we're giving our email addresses up all the time, we're giving our mobile phones up all the time. Well, 66% of mobile device users surveyed last year from eMarketer are willing to give up their personal data if it makes their life more convenient. And we know what convenience means. It means save me money, save me time, show me where I can get coffee near me, all that stuff, right? And then 69%, even more than that, are willing to give up their location if it makes their life more convenient. So this is near me. This is geofencing, geoconquesting, as I just mentioned. And all this iOS 14.5, news about having to opt in 16 times. Frankly, we'll see how that's going to play out, but it has not had a demonstrable impact on the availability of location data today. I can tell you that. So we can get into specific numbers later. There's all kinds of reports out there. Misinformation is the first casualty of war or something like that. So anyway, we'll stick to the truth here on this one. But the fact of the matter is, consumers want convenience and they're willing to give up data to get it. Now, commensurate with that, on the marketing side and the advertising side, in a survey we did just last month, April 2021, we asked marketers across the country, 175 of them, at agencies and brands, hey, how have your campaign and data analytics capabilities changed since the advent of COVID? And 56% of them have actually doubled down on campaign data and analytics, right? That's first party, second, third, of course, it's all data types. And then we've also seen that 33% of them were sort of already well outfitted. So they didn't even have to make any changes. And then just 11% of that population is actually reduced, I imagine, budget cuts have reduced their campaign and data analytics capabilities. So what is that? 89% of marketers are either staying still or increasing their investment in data to fuel their campaigns. That's the takeaway here. And then we asked also, well, hey, if you have all these tools and these budgets, what are you doing to drive people back into stores now that the pandemic is easing, now that people are growing more comfortable with going to the movies, that type of thing? When are you going to start spending? And 15% said we're doing it right now. 8% said we never stopped. So that's 23% right there. Nearly a quarter of marketers are just spending to get people to go to stores right now. And then an additional 40% here, you can see, plan to spend in May and June. So we did this in April. So next 1 to 2 months is this month and June to get that summer discretionary income back into their stores, right? So marketers are spending this money right now. And then you've got another 28% who are waiting to sort of see how the pre-holiday season shakes out, and they'll get people into stores probably for the 2021 holiday period. And then 9% of the folks we surveyed said, actually, we don't do those kinds of campaigns, so let's just move on. So you can see the majority of marketers are spending today to get folks to come back into their stores, despite the fact that people are, just sort of eking out of their homes at the moment. So then we asked one last question. We're going to bring our panel in here in just a second to talk more about this. But we asked one last question: where are you advertising to bring people back into your stores? And perhaps no surprise, paid social was king of the hill at 69%. And then 30% or 31 and 30% were TV and radio, which is also no surprise because, of course, being a more locally driven channel, broadcast television and radio, you would imagine, to get foot traffic into the local furniture store or the local insurance company, whatever the case might be, you're going to see a lot of that on broadcast TV and broadcast radio. And then you sort of see it filtering down from there, paid search, streaming audio. Interesting to note that only 10% of marketers are using streaming video, Hulu, Roku, all that stuff, to get folks to shop locally, which I imagine that number will change over time. And then the out-of-home numbers also you're going to see a spike here, I'm sure very soon, with people now back out on the roads and wanting a sandwich from Panera or whatever the case might be. So then lastly, we said, okay, if paid social rules the roost, how do you prioritize? What channel wins for you? And by far, it was Instagram and Facebook sort of almost tied for first. And then everything else was either a distant third or distant seventh place. And I imagine poor Pinterest is always going to be in seventh place, at least for now. But that TikTok at number 6, I suspect, and I'm sure you do too, knowing what you know, is going to move up the ranks and probably take that number 3 spot here relatively soon. And I'm sure Amy will tell us more about that here in a minute. So with that sort of sets the context for the panel. And let's go ahead and bring everybody back up. So if you guys want to bring your cameras back on, let's jump into a couple questions here from sort of the topic at hand. And then I want to make sure we also have time for audience questions. So we got Amy and Tusar back, I see. Jason probably ran out to get a quick Starbucks. Oh, there he is. All right. So with that, let me go ahead and jump into our first question here. What are some of the more innovative ways, guys, you are seeing advertisers earn consumers' attention today, given the context that we're in, this very strange, unorthodox mode of, shoppers coming back into stores? Amy, let's start with you on this one.
Yeah, I mean, I think, you said it. Obviously, paid media is a really important part right now of how advertisers are looking to connect with consumers, regardless of the channel or the platform that they're investing in. But I think in general, how they're going about that has transformed and just kind of progressed a lot faster over the last year than maybe we would have anticipated. One example, we've talked about this idea of full funnel advertising and marketing strategies for a really long time, but in the last year, we've seen a lot of our advertisers really start to lean into the importance of both brand and that more DR focused initiative, guided toward driving in-store, same-store sales. And then the elements of each of those initiatives has really become more important than ever too, making sure that they're aligned with, either one of those goals. So finding the right audience, whether you're in that awareness stage or in that more like DR driving in store stage, targeting them appropriately based on the channel you're activating on, making sure that creative and CTAs and all of those other elements are really aligned with that customer journey and what's needed in that moment to kind of drive further action. But from a true innovation standpoint, we've obviously seen, as you mentioned, a lot of testing of newer platforms like TikTok, even Reddit, a lot of testing of newer ad units like Google Discovery ads, Snapchat geo filters. People are reinvesting in those a lot. Advanced targeting options, like of course third-party location targeting data, but also like consumer credit card shopping data and really hyper segmented first-party data. So a big investment right now in making sure that they can collect that in-store sales data and utilize that information to model against to find customers who are similar to people that are already coming in store. And then lots of really interesting tests and just different types of ways to engage with customers through digital in general. So things like chatbot experiences that help them, build that kind of one-on-one connection and kind of tie in, the digital customer service experience with what somebody may have typically expected when they go in store. So there's a lot of experimentation happening right now, a lot of testing across the board for sure.
I think the other thing I'd add on to that, to what Amy you said, was taking a little bit of a step back. We're seeing this idea of like branding in DR, right? And how do we, particularly in this past year, which has been a very odd year for all of us to some degree, right? And so what we're seeing is a lot around the CSR space, or social responsibility. Brands talking about what they've been doing to grab consumers' attentions. People can't buy as they normally were, so trying to have a different way to connect. Whether people like it or not, there is this expectation. Now, we did some research with the PR firm Edelman. This expectation of companies and brands to have a position on things and to talk about what they're doing. And so what we're seeing is advertisers are driving consumers' attention, not just to drive direct business right away in that DR space, but also they're moving away from just being like a branding opportunity to talk about what the company is doing as a whole, so their consumer base knows what they're doing.
Nice. Jason, anything to add to this one, or do you want to move to the next one?
I would look at this from a different angle. I mean, I think those are really great points that Amy and Tusar brought up. The way that I think about this is more through creativity, like leading with creativity. I know Amy talked about brand. It's interesting to me that brand building was sort of an afterthought 4 or 5 years ago, as everyone sort of led with big data. But now it's about trust. It's about will someone even click on that search result if they don't know who that brand is, if they don't trust that brand? So I think it's about building brand. And take that a step further, I would say, what are you doing now that's sort of unexpected? How do you lead with creativity? How do you do something big and bold? Like, for example, I think it was Nerf who just ran a campaign where they went to hire a chief TikTok officer, and they hired this like 17-year-old kid from TikTok to create, do nothing but create TikToks for him for 3 months. It seems like the only thing that's working organically right now is TikToks and Reels. So I think that's genius, and maybe that's why TikTok isn't at the top of the heap with paid yet, because we're having so much success with organic, still figuring it out. Probably a good question for Amy, but I would say other innovative ways is thinking more like Netflix, into episodic series instead of one-offs. Maybe thinking more like Peloton, and choose your own bite-sized lesson or adventure. So I like to think about how you can kind of flip it on its head and think about going big and bold and leading with creativity, doing something unexpected. I mean, we had Bruce Dickinson, Iron Maiden, the singer of Iron Maiden, as our keynote. It was something fun and unexpected, and inspiring, but it also was relevant to our audience. We have a huge audience in Brazil, and Iron Maiden and Bruce Dickinson are gods in Brazil. So I think it's about leading with creativity, trying new things, being bold, and following the trends, but staying rooted in the fundamentals of marketing and advertising. We get so caught up in the shiny new object that we forget how to write good copy.
Love it. I love it. And if anyone's got street cred around creativity, it's Jason Miller, host of This Just Works. If you've not heard of This Just Works, you're going to want to tune into the next one. So let's ask this one about in-person behavior. How are you guys seeing target audiences change in terms of behavior with in-person interactions at either at stores or locations that are interesting? Jason, let's start off with you on this one.
So I think this is interesting to me because I think what we're seeing right now is the world reopens. And London, we're in an interesting space because we just reopened non-essential retail a week or so ago, and in just a couple of weeks, I think all restrictions will be lifted. But I think what I think is most important is how can we build a bridge, like a true between a hybrid bridge between these two environments, between the online and the offline. And how do these businesses who came up with some new services and offerings during COVID, keep flexing those muscles while figuring out how to build that bridge to the offline world. And the other things that are top of mind with me recently, and things we talk a lot about at Active Campaign are there's an anxiety. There's actually people are have anxiety about going back out into the world, and the fact that there's a scooter zipping by my flat every 3 minutes tells me that you can get anything and everything delivered to you. So what's the incentive to go back out? But I think you need to figure out what is that balance, what's that hybrid between the online and the offline. How can you open it up? How can you keep flexing those digital transformational muscles that we were sort of forced to kick into gear?
Amy, Tusar, anything to add to that?
Yeah, well, I would just add maybe, it's interesting because we had a conversation similar to what you just described, Jason, with a client just yesterday. And it's a client who traditionally 98% of their retail business has happened in store. And so without that model in place to kind of shift toward online retail, last year was a really tough year for them. Now, as places are reopening and retail locations, are capable of bringing customers back in, they're struggling with how to adapt their kind of their plan and the way that they approach talking to their consumers, knowing that the motivations of those people coming in store might be a little bit different. And even though as a business, it's not their intention to compete in an online retail space as much as it is an in-store retail place, that doesn't mean that those consumers' mindsets haven't shifted in terms of their comfort level with now going to other avenues for the same products that they previously would have bought in store. And so I think really thinking deeply about how the motivation of your typical customer may have changed over the last year, and really using those insights to think about the messaging and the ways that you talk to them and how that informs, all of the rest of your strategy, whether that's the experience that they receive when they actually come in store or how you're talking to them in a digital environment is really important right now.
Yeah, I mean, I have not much more to add from a actual marketing perspective, but I can talk to my consumer, right? We're all consumers fundamentally, and I have a different perception of everything you're saying, Amy. I was just at the barber on Friday, and before COVID, I had to just go and wait, and if there's 20 people there, you just wait for all 20. Now everything is an appointment, right? Or I go to a store and it's not super crowded when it used to be insane lines, and so I have these different expectations that I have to figure out, and the stores have to figure out also of what that will go into. And so I think we all are experiencing that. If we always take a step back and forget about being marketers, but just remember that we are all consumers, we are all experiencing this in real time too.
And that's a really great point. I have not gone to the barber because I'm full on mullet, but it's coming back in the UK, and I got one shot left to grow my hair back to my 80s metal hair length. I think I got one shot left. Anyway, the other thing that just kind of popped into my head when you were talking about that example, Tusar, is the challenge of how do you keep someone's attention online still when they're racing outside to hug their friends and just get out. I mean, virtual events I know are challenging. So how do you keep someone's attention online while they're rushing outside to be, out in the world again? And there's a couple of great examples from some of our active campaign customers. There's a company called Hip Cooks that they were doing. They would go around and they would do virtual, or they would do cooking courses, right? Physical cooking courses. And so they moved that experience online, and they actually they ended up expanding their business. They could segment the audience, they could automate the respondents, and they could build this. We actually did one with the team where it was an online virtual cooking course, and it was great. Another one, Party Headphones, another company that was all about DJs and silent discos, and they moved that experience online. So and they expanded the business again. So I think it's interesting to see, how do you keep those pivots that were so interesting and cool, and open up that experience and the service offerings to so many more, take that globally, and then balance that with the physical retail space. So I think it's super exciting. I think we should be cautious about our messaging, but I think it's exciting to see how the world responds to this.
Yeah, and I think,
Yeah.
Jason, on your point on events, like that's something we're seeing, obviously a little bit different than the consumer side, but from a B2B perspective at LinkedIn, we're seeing like there is this hybrid model that people expect. And we're seeing a lot of engagement happening on our platform with that. And so trying to figure that out across all aspects of your life is really important.
LinkedIn Live, man, we're killing it on LinkedIn Live right now. I'll tell you what, it boosts followers, it boosts engagement, and I just saw there's some cool new features today, so congrats on that. But yeah, live streaming, we're working on how do we segment that over to or pivot that over to a hybrid event space as well moving forward. But great point.
New rules being written as we speak. I love it. So the next question for you guys is around paid social. There's a ton of money that gets spent in this channel. It's almost a default. Like if you're not advertising on social, you're really not doing your job. So let's isolate, if we can, for our audience, what are some of the really effective ways? There's all kinds of ways to do it wrong, but what are some of the more effective ways you're seeing advertisers leverage paid social today? Tusar, let's go ahead and start with you if you want to jump into this. I think Amy might have just jumped off.
I can jump in to start, and then I'm sure she gets a more collective view as opposed to me, which is very much on one social channel that I'm looking at.
Sure.
But yeah, I think what we talk about is this idea of organic to paid. So as Jason was talking about before with the TikTok and pieces like that, like we are thinking about how do we make an ecosystem? How do we create an ecosystem where people can consume the information how they want to consume, and we can make stuff that's relevant, to Jason's point also earlier. So if organically you're building that solid base and you're building information that will be useful to your target audience and to who you're trying to reach as an advertiser, that is the key, right? At the end of the day, no one wants to see something that is, if it's not relevant to them, they're going to skip over it, nor do they want it in their face all the time. It's got to be somewhat relevant. So relevancy first and foremost overall will be important. I think at the forefront, and then it's a matter of amplifying the message that goes to the right audience. So targeting is going to be huge, and making sure you're trying to get to the audience that will find that most relevant is how I kind of view it.
Right on. Amy, you're back just in time. We're talking about the best ways to think about and use paid social, because we know there's all kinds of ways to spend money on that channel. What are some of the really smart ways you're seeing your users do that?
Yeah, and sorry for dropping off there for a second. I'm fighting some allergies, so I wanted to spare you guys from having to hear me coughing in your ear. But to build a little bit on what Tusar was saying, I mentioned a little bit earlier this idea of testing different platforms for different needs, and definitely we're finding, different platforms have a different role in terms of the audience that they can reach and the stage that they're beneficial for in terms of driving that customer journey. But I think more than anything, once you've kind of defined the audience that you want to speak to, and that's the most important element to start with in my mind, really being able to look at the different targeting capabilities that are available across each platform and create a solid roadmap for how you're going to engage each audience across each place, whether that's organically or from a paid perspective, is absolutely, I think, one of the most effective exercises that an advertiser can undertake. But obviously, there are a lot of out-of-the-box options that kind of play into that. Things like, location-based data that'll let you find people based on where they were recently, which you discussed earlier, Deanne, or, I mentioned credit card data already that can show you where people have purchased items, what they've purchased, you can layer that with the native data that's available from these publishers like LinkedIn, Facebook, or Google based on the audience you're trying to reach. Look at what life stage they're in and how that indicates what products or services they're in the market for. I think in general, we're seeing right now kind of a resurgence of this idea of audience first messaging and advertising, and that's one of the most effective things that you can do. And then I'm sure that Jason will have plenty to comment on related to how that parlays into the messaging and the strategy and around the communications and how you actually talk to those people. But the wealth of opportunity that exists in paid social when it comes to different types of ad formats that you can play with, is another thing that, I would just really encourage any marketer to experiment with, because I think a lot of these ad units are still really underutilized, and the companies that are really at the forefront of innovation are the ones that are trying new things like, interactive AR elements or those Snapchat geo filters we talked about earlier. And then making sure that, that those are really aligned with those call to actions that they're trying to hammer home for those particular audiences.
I have a couple of thoughts here, just a couple. But I would say, I would agree, Amy, it's a great point about testing. We used to, my previous team at LinkedIn, we used to say, I think if it can be tested, it can be improved. And so there was always a testing involved there. But some things that I've noticed, and not to get on the technical side, but again, as I think about how do I lead, with creativity and break through the noise, the one thing I've noticed is the more produced, and video, obviously video is super hot, right? The more produced a video is, the worse it seems to perform. So it's like we tried these really slick videos and we tested it against just opening with a talking head. And the talking head always killed it because I guess we're drawn to that face. And Gary Vaynerchuk is an interesting character, right? He's brilliant. He's done amazing stuff. But if you look at who creates Gary V's videos, it's these young kids who have kind of hacked like videos and vertical videos specifically. And they really, if you drill down and take that formula, you have about a second and a half to just start the video instead of like with a big intro. You're just like, today we're gonna learn about 3 tips for email marketing. Like you have to jump in there. And like it was on a podcast last week, and like 10 minutes in, they're still doing intros. I'm like, wait, what's going on here? Like, anyway, that's one thing. I think the other thing is, back to copywriting. When did we forget how to write good copy? Why is everything in my feed? Check this out. Check out this. Why are we ordering people around? It's very, it's like the military, like ordering people to do things. That's not good copy. Go back to, I actually have this on my desk. Confessions of an Ad Man, the Bible. This thing is still relevant. There's notes and crap popping out of here because I still use this. But getting back to the fundamentals of what works, and the last thing I'll say is when you find an example of a good ad, screenshot that and save it because you need this inspiration for your team, right? Good copy, good creative. I always get drawn into nostalgic stuff and stuff that really pops with colors. But I screenshot these and I share this with my team for inspiration. I'm like, look at this is cool, this is cool. And then you can steal like an artist, like Austin Kleon would say. Nothing's original. Borrow the ideas, put your own unique spin on it, and push it forward.
Yeah, and I can just maybe add like some tools that are really helpful in that effort. And just in case everybody's not familiar, if you're advertising on a platform like Facebook, they have an ad library available, for example. So you can actually go in and search any company in the world practically. And if they have active ads or inactive ads that have run recently, you can see what they've messaged to their audience. And you can't see who they targeted with those ads, but it's really helpful, I find, to go in and research that data and look at what other people are also saying, whether it's a brand that you really want to emulate in terms of their tone and their message, or a competitor that you want to find white space with.
I didn't even know that. What's that called? I'm like learning things today too. Thank you. What is that called?
The Facebook ad library. I'll ping you a link.
Please do. Very cool.
Look at that. Maybe our Media Post friends will do that for everybody. And in fact, TikTok following suit, because Facebook was first, TikTok just last month released their own ad library. So you can see what Oscar Mayer's doing and what Supercuts is doing and all the fun things. So it's a really smart tip to go look at what other leading brands are serving up. Okay, I saved the lightning rod question for the last question before we get to audience queries. But this is the one I know we're all going to have a strong opinion on. So I want to hear, whoever wants to go first, just jump in. Measurement. So how are you seeing campaign measurement priorities shift given sort of this groundswell to DR, groundswell to how do we drive sales? Like, what's going on with metrics and how do we think about this rationally? Who wants to start?
I can jump in.
Amy, please go ahead.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, first of all, budget cuts aside, I would love to talk to that 11% of marketers or whoever it was that are not investing in more campaign data and analytics right now, because that's definitely not the trend that I would say we're seeing with our clients. I think, measurement in general has had to evolve rapidly as digital media has evolved over the last several years. But specifically in the last 12 months, there's been a commitment to really making sure that this idea of measurement is ultimately aligned with whatever your business goal is. So not just focused on those media metrics, CPM, CPC, CTR, things like that, but truly what it is that advertiser or retailer or client or customer, whoever it is, wants to accomplish, and making sure that you have a plan in place in order to achieve that. I firmly believe that measurement goals are only as good as the measurement plan that you have in place in order to accomplish them. So you really have to take time, I believe, to understand, again, what tools are available, whether you're looking at a channel like a LinkedIn, making sure that you understand their capability to match things like sales leads and sales pipeline back to actual closed opportunities, or if you're an online retailer and you're advertising with a TikTok or a Facebook, understanding how you can look at your in-store data and match that back to campaign exposure. This whole world of identity change that we're going through right now is throwing a big wrench in everyone's kind of traditional measurement strategy. But I firmly believe for the future of advertising, it's a good thing in terms of kind of causing, again, this accelerated shift toward really having that solid measurement plan in place so that you can capture as much data as possible in order to be able to, ultimately as marketers, justify what we do, like justify the investment that we're spending in time and money in these channels and how they're helping drive forward business results.
Yeah, I think just to add on, I think measurement is becoming and continue to be the most important place that people are investing. To Amy's point, I think the other piece of it is it's always about that business goal, right? That Amy talked about, whether it be actual return on investment in dollars and spend or whatever the metrics are that they're working towards. I think we talked about this before a little bit, but there's this element of with digital, as we think about the movement of marketing dollars to digital, it's held to a higher standard, right? In terms of being accountable, and there's because you can measure it to some degree. Whereas when you did an out-of-home spot or you did a TV spot, there might not be, or newspaper spot, print spot, there wasn't as much beyond the reach that it exceeded, and maybe the audience segments that that went through. But with digital, there's a want and need to get that to a stronger degree of how has my spend improved, how has it driven business results, and so it's finding that that people are being pushed to. What I think where there'll be an interesting juxtaposition is, as we talked about before, in terms of people going back and how consumers will react and target audiences. Now that a lot of things as we think will become this hybrid world, how does that change as media dollars spent? How does things in terms of out of home budgets, and I know they've been held to higher standard, to different standards recently, but how will that all change in ways that weren't traditionally measured? I think will be interesting to look at going forward.
I would only add to that, again, in my brand marketing shoes, but with my background in demand gen, I would say there's no excuse if you're not measuring effectively anymore. There's no excuse. There's too many resources out there, and there's too many people who are doing it well to help you out. But I would say how I've seen it shift, again, I would go back to the importance of branding, brand awareness. I've never seen a topic go from no one cares anything about this to it's the hottest thing in the world right now, and it's building a brand. Everyone wants to build a brand. Everyone wants to measure brand effectiveness, whether you do that through, I don't know, branded keyword search, referral traffic. I mean, there's numerous ways you can do that. And to that point, anyone who plays the vanity metrics card, it's just silly. It's so passé to use that cop-out excuse of, oh, you're measuring vanity metrics. Vanity metrics are great for guiding your strategy. You see what content's working, what's not working. Every metric is important. It just depends on who you're sharing those metrics with. Now, my team, has always had two sets of dashboards. One we report to the C-suites, and one we use to inform our strategy, our campaigns, our advertising, and see what's working. And there are a bunch of vanity metrics on there because they work and they help us point us in the right direction. So yeah, I struggle with this one a little bit, but I think it was Rand Fishkin who said there's a serendipitous element to marketing that we can never measure, and we should be okay with that. And I'll wrap up my little statement there with a tweet that I saw from Amber Naslund from LinkedIn, by the way, and it really stuck with me, and I shared it. But she said, things marketers undervalue: brand marketing, dark actions, time and consistency, repetition, clarity of message, and reach. Things they overvalue: engagement. I'm partial on that. Leads, hyper targeting, virality, stunts. So I like how she put that. I don't completely 100% agree with it, but I'm 90% there. But like, stop undervaluing the things that can help you get better at overall marketing and advertising. That's all I'll say.
Love it. Love it. Great segue to open the floor to questions from attendees. I'm sure questions have rolled in here as we've been talking. So Mark, I want to turn it over to you and have you walk us through question number one here.
That's great. Thank you so much, guys. This was fantastic. As we mentioned earlier, we have time for a few questions here from our audience. Just a reminder, a copy of today's recording and webinar will be sent to all of you via email tomorrow morning, so keep an eye out. So our first question comes along to this engagement and audience attribution. What do you attribute in-store sales to different ad channels? How do you attribute in-store sales to different ad channels?
Amy, you want to take that one?
Yeah, I can take that one. I mean, I kind of mentioned this a little bit earlier, but obviously the holy grail of solving this problem, there are a lot of ways, as Jason just mentioned, to approach this issue. The holy grail is being able to take that in-store sales data and ingest it into a channel like a Facebook or a Google, and they have tools that enable you to do this, whether you're uploading it manually through like a drop file or through a feed or through a partner that you work with, like a POS system. There are a lot of different ways to approach this. But that's the easiest way to do it ultimately, is to take your own data, find a way to get it into these kind of walled gardens that exist, if those are the channels you're advertising on, and then allow them to match back based on any information that you can provide on those individual customers to ad exposure or ad results. So that's the like grand goal. I would say in my experience, that's a much easier statement than I found is able to be accomplished by some of the clients that we work with, however. So there are a lot of other ways that you can go about it as well, and inferring what those in-store sales might have been based on different signals that you can track. So let's say you can track like a find a location button on your website. Like if somebody clicks on an ad and then clicks on a find a location button on your website, that's an indication they're going to go in store. Or let's say that you can work with, a partner, a third-party partner who can track in-store visits somehow. If you can track the person all the way to the visit, and then you have metrics available on what, percentage of your in-store visits tend to convert and what the average cart value is, then you can make some correlations there and create some proxy metrics to say, okay, here's an approximation of how much in-store sales we think generated from this campaign. So that's a really quick, dirty answer to say, there are a lot of ways to go about this. But again, as Jason mentioned, like so many tools available in the space today that can help solve those problems.
And let me just add, thank you, Amy. That's a really actually comprehensive answer. I would be remiss in not doing my job if I did not say that Visit Local does exactly what you just said, which is tie campaign spend to in-store visits. So it's a great
opening there, Dan.
Amy, you're too kind. So just a freebie for everybody. Sorry to be a shill. I will step back. Tusar or Jason, any comments, or should we jump to the next question?
I mean, that's a pretty technical question. During my Microsoft days, we used to do some similar stuff where we had some customers who would run geo-targeted ads to a certain region and figure out how far they could do that offer to where it would drive traffic back, and they could really segment their audiences better. And they use, I mean, I know QR codes are kind of, people don't really appreciate QR codes anymore, but I've also seen some interesting use cases of scanning QR codes in stores and linking that back too. So I think to Amy and Dan's point, it's about that data and having that that geo-fenced area, and how far can you take it, and how far can you map it back. And again, there's some quick and dirty ways to get it done. We got a lot of crap at Bing, but we had some really cool, interesting use cases there, I'll say. And plus, the targeting mapped back to LinkedIn is super cool too.
Mark, let's go ahead with the next question.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah. So back to what Amy was saying, and let's make it a little bit more broad. Back to, instead of what kind of companies, what kind of industries and verticals are you guys surveying? What type of companies? Not specific companies, of course.
Right.
I think it was in relation to your data, Dan, and what your survey questions.
Oh yeah, fair enough. Yeah, so the industries, or the consumer segments, if you want to think about it that way, that Reveal Mobile trades in runs the gamut around, consumables and durable goods. I guess it's a very broad brush, but everything from, quick serve restaurants and, high volume, low margin transactions, all the way up to low volume, high margin transactions like auto dealerships, or name a durable good, right? So it really runs the gamut. The kinds of segments that we don't often work in are roofing companies, home services, dentist offices, where volume is super low. So you can correlate in your head, of course. The more visits a location gets, the more viable and the more fruitful, frankly, that exercise is going to be from a geofencing standpoint.
Right,
anyone
that's
else to that, or Mark, you want to go with the next question?
Do we have time for one more?
We do. Yeah, it looks like we got a couple minutes.
Okay, great. So I'm sorry about that. Dave asked a good question for all of you guys. What is the future of incentivized ads?
I'm going to need some help with that one. Incentivized ads. Can anyone decode that for me?
I'm wondering if maybe like offer type ads, if that's what
I was thinking too, some sort of offer.
Okay. Is that like shoppable media, or I'm trying to?
I was just thinking it's like an offer to do something. Like
Question asker, if you wouldn't mind clarifying in the questions box, we would love to get your thoughts on what incentivized ads are, just so we're not fumbling your question. I apologize for that. We don't want to guess and get it wrong either. Mark, while that person clarifies, anything else you can ask us?
Sure, we got time for one more. Give me 1 second here. So, are specific paid and social channels better for certain consumer segments? I advertise for a regional chain of restaurants and I want to move beyond just Facebook's. What kind of innovative services and agencies are offered? Can you share a few best practices?
That's a lot. Let's take the first part of that. I think it's about specific social channels working better for certain consumer segments. Amy, do you have any insights on that by chance in your role?
Yeah. I mean, obviously, yes, the answer would be yes. I mean, look at a LinkedIn, for example, like that is going to be your absolute best place to reach any type of business focused audience if that's your customer. When it comes to more of like a Gen Z type consumer, definitely we would recommend considering like a Snapchat, or even better, a TikTok type platform. I think for us, like when we're discussing those alternative options, it starts with exactly where the question asked, what's the audience you're trying to reach? And then we also really want to understand, as a company, what are your capabilities when it comes to creative design and messaging and things like that? Because, you look at a platform like a TikTok, and, I think it was Jason that mentioned earlier, like how strong the organic content performs on TikTok. TikTok will tell you, like, they don't want you to create an ad, they want you to create a TikTok when it comes to like a paid unit. So, I mean, that's literally their tagline. So I think that's an example of like, would we recommend a TikTok for a Gen Z or younger consumer? Absolutely, but not if as a brand or as a company, you're not able to kind of lean into what that means from an aesthetic standpoint and a messaging standpoint in order to make the ad units impactful to begin with. But I think the second part of the question was relative to restaurants specifically, and that's actually a big base of clients that we work with at Centro. And I'll tell you that Snapchat and TikTok are two of the biggest opportunities outside of Facebook and Instagram, of course, that our restaurant clients are leaning into currently. And everything from geo filters to just, vertical short video ads to more storytelling like elements, like kind of a carousel ad that provides several different ad units in one.
Yeah, and I think the other thing on that is I think that goes back a little bit to also relevance. So to your point, I mean, obviously we see a lot of business-minded ads on ours, but it's the audience and the mindset of the audience too when they're on whatever platform they're on. So outside of that, we also see a lot of clients in the travel space and in luxury, right? Like luxury automobile, luxury pieces, because the mindset of your typical LinkedIn member and where they're in and what stage of life they're in fits into all of those pieces. So they could one day be thinking about, for their work, what cloud computing software to do, but also they're in the middle of buying a Rolex or buying an Audi. And so there's a lot of different mindsets and life stages that people are in.
I would just add one thing. I think those are great points too, Sarah and Amy. But the only thing I would add is by Facebook, I'm assuming you're looping Instagram in with that. And if it's working, I would probably move away from it. I would double down. But something else that I've noticed during COVID, where I focused a lot on trying to be everywhere at one time, it's impossible, right? So pick a couple of channels and focus and double down. Joe Polizzi, even the founder of Content Marketing Institute, even went back on this years ago. He said, "Be everywhere, have a presence everywhere." And like literally this year, he's like, "I was wrong." And he said, "Pick 2 channels, double down, focus your energy." And I think that's super great advice for businesses, for personal brands, for anything.
Nice. Hey, Mark, did we get clarity from the question asker on incentivized ads by chance?
We actually did. Give me a second here. Seems like in today's fragmented world, we need to give people a reason to give their attention, is what Dave says.
Okay.
Right.
Dave, I think you just need to entertain them, man. That's the new incentive. I think you just need to entertain them. I was watching Chipotle's TikToks the other day, and they're funny as hell. I mean, I think you got to be funny. You got to entertain. I think that's the incentive. You're trading, especially at the top of the funnel, you're trading entertainment now in a short, quick 30-second clip.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, you don't want to get into a discount war. I mean, people can go back and forth all day long with different offers in terms of like incentivizing people to buy something. But I think you're right, Jason. I feel like it's that storytelling element, that connecting with that customer. That's the thing that's going to keep them around much longer than just, a quick sale or offer or something like that.
You guys, I want to thank you all for your time, your wisdom, your energy. Jason, Amy, Tusar, awesome session. You guys are a wealth of knowledge and frankly, a lot of fun to interact with. Thank you all for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Great to see
you.
Yeah, thank you everyone today. And again, as we mentioned earlier, there'll be a recording of the webinar that will go out tomorrow morning, and you guys will all receive it. Thank you to Dan and his illustrious panel for a great discussion and some great questions from the audience. Stay tuned to MediaPost website and digital publications in your inbox for more informative webinars to come from other valuable MediaPost partners as we go. Thank you guys so much. We really appreciate it, and we'll see you again shortly. Stay safe out there.
Take care, all.